Good evening and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm your host, Eugene Chan. Our guest tonight is Regina Ip, who is a member of the Executive Council and Legislative Council, also the founder and chairperson of the New People's Party. Previously, she was the first female director of immigration and also the first female secretary of security. She's also the founder and chairwoman of the Cervantes Policy Institute, a think tank in Hong Kong. We have invited Mrs. Ip to share with us her insights if our newly elected election committee members be able to select the most suitable chief executive and legislators for Hong Kong. Welcome, Regina. Regina, you just had your booster dose in BioNTech, and how do you feel?
Fine, no problem. No adverse effect whatsoever.
Right. And thank you for being one of the first to try the third dose.
Yeah.
Right. In March this year, the Hong Kong electoral system was amended to ensure the principle of one country, two systems will be ensured, and only the patriots will be administering Hong Kong. On last Sunday, we just had our election, and this year the election committee was expanded from 1,200 to 1,500, from 5 sexes from the 4 sexes before. The job is not only choosing the CE, but it's also be tasked to nominate our legislators and also to elect 40 members of the new legislature. So we have now more members and more sectors. And it represents also the grassroots and even our Hong Kong residents in the mainland. So in your opinion, do you think the election committee now is better represented and more representative of Hong Kong's society as a whole?
Definitely. It is highly broadly based, as you pointed out, including grassroots and elites, senior professionals, distinguished scientists.
Right.
And it will ensure our return to good order and good governance.
Right.
In the Legislative Council and in Hong Kong as a whole. You know, I've served in LegCo for 13 years now, and I have seen how our LegCo have gone from bad to worse, you know.
Right.
You know, a lot of disorder, dysfunction, you know, and we had colleagues who oppose anything to do with China, you know, whether it's national security or national education or co-location or immigration facilities at the high-speed rail station. They even voted no to 4 tranches of anti-epidemic funds.
Right.
A lot of important government initiatives, for example, in housing and land development, were held up. You know, so it's really important that we put an end to this sort of dysfunction,
right,
and ensure that people who truly support the basic law and are loyal to the SAR will be elected to hold important positions of governance.
Regina, as you just mentioned, the members were from all walks of life. There's even fishermen, there are even farmers on the committee. Do you think they need to have other qualifications to be sitting on the election committee? And how can their competency can be assessed? I mean, will patriot alone be a good enough prerequisite to be a good election committee member?
Well, as Mr. Xia Baolong, the head of the Hong Kong Macau Affairs Office, elaborated in mid-July, you know, patriotism is a necessary but not sufficient condition.
Right.
You know, there need to be other requirements other than, you know, understanding accurately the basic law, implementing the one country, two systems according to its intent. We also need people who can really solve problems, you know, can get things done, can bring together different parts of our community, and are conscientious and diligent in undertaking their duties. So, for example, LegCo, I expect the future LegCo members to be more or less full-time.
Right.
They really need to spend a lot of time in LegCo, you know. This term, ever since the departure of the Pan-Democrats, we are enacting a record number of bills, you know, because there's a lot of work to be done.
Right.
So the next legislature must be composed of people with competence and diligence.
Yes. Yeah. Regina, we just mentioned that it will be more broadly represented. But if you look at the voters, we had 246,000 voters to down to 7,900 voters. I mean, there's obviously a drastic reduction of those who can vote. And how can you convince our viewers that it's part of, this election committee is representing them?
Well, it's not just numbers that count, you know.
Yeah.
It's, what we want is qualitative improvement,
Okay.
not just quantitative expansion. In fact, what we have seen in the past 20-odd years is that with the expansion of the elective elements, you know, there is more and more chaos and dysfunction in our society, inside or outside Electoral. So the electoral reform mandated by the National People's Congress is intended to cure all these problems. You know, that's why the rules have been changed. We want people of quality and commitment to be in Electoral and in government. You know.
Okay, so Regina, SCMP has commented recently that in this new system, the central government seems to be cracking down on the super wealthy because each family can only limited, say, to 2 members on the election committee. And we even see some of our tycoons on the street handing out pamphlets and connecting with the people. Is this a new change of policy for the central government to the well-to-do in Hong Kong? Is it a signal?
I don't think there is any crackdown on the wealthy, but it is a very good thing to see our tycoons being close to the people, making home visits, making sure they understand how the ordinary people or the less privileged members of our society live. I think that is a very good gesture.
Right, right. Regina, also in this new system, we have what we call the Candidate Eligibility Review Committee that assess whether the person can either be on the election committee or legislative councillor or even the chief executive. But according to Article 26 of the Basic Law, that every person has the right to elect and to be elected. Is there any issue there in your point?
Well, that is not an absolute right. It is a qualified right anyway, currently. You need to be over a certain age. You cannot be someone who is bankrupt. You need to be mentally sound, you know. It is definitely not an absolute right under international human rights conventions, you know. So it is entirely reasonable for the central authorities to stipulate the conditions. Definitely, you need to be loyal to the SAR and you need to be sincerely upholding the basic law. That's why our new legislation stipulates how you should take the oath. You cannot take the oath in a way that insults your own country, as some young people did in 2016. And in vetting the candidates, you know, the Qualifications Review Committee will also look at the track record, because some people could simply pay lip service to the basic law. You can only assess whether that person is truly loyal, truly supportive, by looking at the entire record of what that person has said and done in the past.
Regina, in this last week, Mr. Tam Yu-jung, one of our respected leader, had said after the election there will be a chief convener for the election committee, and the function is, should the chief executive and his or her principal official having issues other than the legal issues, this group of election committee members will be able to come out and support the chief executive. Do you think that is seen to be a second center of power? Will that undermine the chief executive flexibility and maneuverability of carrying out policies?
Well, I think I would adhere to what's in the Basic Law. Basic Law Article 43 states clearly that the chief executive is accountable to the central government and to the people of Hong Kong. In fact, the decisions made by the NPC Standing Committee say that the chief convener will be appointed from among national level leaders to coordinate and will spring into action where necessary. I don't think it should have any powers beyond what's in the Basic Law or in the NPC decisions.
Right, so let's move on to one of the jobs of the newly elected election committee members is to select the appropriate legislator for us. What will be the criteria do you think the election committee members should have before they say, all right, I'm going to give you the nomination?
Well, my thinking is that there will be 3 categories of legislators. 20 from geographical constituencies,
yeah.
so they will represent the districts,
Right.
you know. And then 30 from functional constituencies. They will represent their occupations or their professions or business sectors. So the election committee, they will vote by means of block vote.
Okay.
All 40, you know, not universal suffrage, you know.
Right.
And I think they should represent people who represent the overall interests of Hong Kong and the nation, not just the interests of a particular sector or a particular region. So I think it would have, should be people with broader vision, more long-term view of what's in the best interest of Hong Kong.
Right. Regina, so you mentioned earlier, in recent months, when the pro-establishment legislators are in the Legislative Council, a record number of bills has been passed. So it looks like even with the new legislature, there are unlikely to be any filibustering, anything like that. So do you think we can solve all the long-standing issues of Hong Kong? I mean, like a land shortage, the income equality, the upward mobility of younger people?
Well, we have amended our rules of procedures to tighten up, you know, various provisions, outdated provisions, you know, to update our rules of procedures.
Right.
So that, for example, if a member is absent from the council when there's a quorum call, that member could be fined $3,000+, which is a very good thing in my opinion. You know, so I think all these changes will ensure that our legislature will return to a much higher level of efficiency. Right. As for solving the other deep-rooted problems like land and housing shortage, it really requires not just political determination, but also new thinking on the part of the government. You know, much more bold and daring measures.
All right. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Regina. Let's take a break and don't go away. Welcome back. We have been talking with Regina Ip about the election committee polls, which was held on Sunday, and the significance of their new composition to all of us here in Hong Kong. So, Regina, let's move on to one of the main functions of the election committee, is to select or elect our chief executive. Shabalong, the director of Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office, has pointed out that the future chief executive must have 5 prerequisites. I have summarized it in point form. In short, staunch support, determination, commitment and accountability, love for the people and stand for the people, ability to rally and unite people, and sense of responsibility and conviction. Professor Lau Siu Kai was here last week, and he commented that it is very difficult to find a charismatic leader with all those 5 qualities. Do you agree?
Well, you never know, you know. Some people look good, the CV look good on paper, but you only find out whether somebody is suitable after that person has taken up the office. And no one is perfect. And Hong Kong has a very challenging environment, you know. So I think these requirements are very reasonable, but we will simply have to keep working hard to find the right candidate.
Right. Regina, so as an alternative, would it be, an option to have a CE choosing his or her principal officials that fulfill all the criteria as a team? Would that be an alternative?
It's very important for the chief executive to have a good team and to work as a team, you know. Under the basic law, it's for the chief executive to make recommendations, but for the central government to make the appointments, you know. And we have seen in recent reshuffle that other than competence, loyalty, reliability, patriotism are very important qualities. Because we can expect the international environment, the relationship between China and US to continue to be fairly fraught, you know, and the world, because it's the pandemic, is not going to go away anytime soon. So the new team must be able to deal with crises.
Right.
Crisis management,
right.
the ability to manage crises will be a very important criterion.
Right. Regina, with those 5 prerequisites that Xia Baolong mentioned to us, which one will be the most lacking amongst, in general, for all the political leaders we have in Hong Kong?
Well, I don't think it would be fair for me to pick on them. You know?
Okay.
But I think we do need new thinking, because Mr. Xia pointed out we need to really have breakthrough solutions to our long-standing problems. He used the Chinese word "po gai,"
yes.
meaning not just resolve, but really break the deadlock. You know, so it means, you know, the new government, new administration must be able to have new thinking, be bold and daring, and bring forward innovative solutions.
Right. Regina, I know you've been very polite and not commented about all our past leaders, but you have been with the, closely attached to Hong Kong society for the past 24 years. You have worked with all the 4 CEs, Mr. Tong, Mr. Zhang, Mr. Leung, and Mrs. Lam. I think you know just about everyone in the government and in the political circle. Do you think we have more than one suitable candidate for our newly elected EC member to choose from?
I'm sure there are plenty of aspirants, you know. As to how many will come forward as candidates, you know, it's I have no idea.
Right.
You know, it's hard to judge at this stage how many will come forward.
Do we have suitable ones?
There are no lack of aspirants, you know.
Okay.
From the point of view of those aspire to this office, they must consider themselves as suitable.
Right. And you said they have to be tested when they're in the job as well.
Yes.
Right. Since you just mentioned, as you know, I mean, we always hear that in the news and amongst table conversations that being a Hong Kong Chief Executive is one of the not only highly demanding, we will use the word a daunting task to be the Chief Executive. I mean, you are a seasoned political leader in Hong Kong, and you have taken part in the lead-up of the CE elections in 2012 and 2017. If the election committee felt that you would be a suitable candidate and they want to nominate you, what would be the kind of factors you would consider before you say, I agree, before you agree to run?
It's a hypothetical question that will be inappropriate for me to answer at this stage.
Right.
But I can point out that, as Mr. Xia Baolong pointed out, there are plenty of conflicts, internal conflicts and tension within Hong Kong, and inherent in the concept of one country, 2 systems. There are different sets of values in Hong Kong, different cultures, you know, by virtue of our history. So it's important for the new leader to be able to resolve all these internal conflicts and tensions and not just veer to one extreme, you know. That's why he highlighted the ability to bring together different parts of our society as a key criterion, and I agree with him. So in other words, you think anybody who are asked to run should consider whether they have the ability with under those 5 prerequisites? To work with different parts of the community, you know. People who dislike the civil service, people who dislike politicians, people who dislike wealthy people, people who look down on poor people, the different factions in our society. So you need a chief executive who is able to work with different segments of our society to hammer out a consensus as far as possible.
Right. Regina, I mean, as I said to you, you're a very seasoned, good political leader for Hong Kong. That has give us a lot of hard work for us, and people are appreciative of your work. And if you look into the future, with this new electoral system, with the national security legislation, with the new chief executive, do you think Hong Kong has a good future? See, I'm sure you will say yes, but before you say that, we all know that we need to work closely with our motherland. We have the 14 5-year plan, we have the Shanghai, we have the Greater Bay Area. But in the past, Hong Kong people are not very enthusiastic. They pay lip service, especially our younger generation may not be as attached to our motherland as the other parts of the society. Do we have a good chance of making it this time and not miss the boat?
First of all, after all the measures, decisive measures taken by the central authorities, we have the return of stability and security. And after the last Sunday's elections, we have the return of electoral stability, political security too. And the central authorities have put forward a lot of measures beneficial to Hong Kong, which expand our possibilities, our opportunities, and give us a much greater market in the Greater Bay Area. But it is very important for the next leader, in fact, the next administration, to be able not just to preach to Hong Kong people, but also to inspire and move and motivate our younger people to grasp the opportunities of the Greater Bay Area, the Qianhai, expanded Qianhai region, for example. So that's really the challenge of the next administration, not just to talk the talk, but to able to lead the people to walk the walk.
Regina, how do you deal with the Western media who are saying constantly, I know you have been speaking on behalf of us, do you see that pressure from the Western media against Hong Kong's rule of law, whether we are having democracy being enshrined in Hong Kong? Do you see that continue to keep pressure on us and affect our being a hub of financial hub?
Well, actually, despite all the bad-mouthing of Hong Kong in the past 2 years, our rankings in many international indexes have moved up. Fraser Institute continues to rank Hong Kong the freest economy. So I think we just have to brush off all these unfounded and unfair comments and keep telling the Western media that one country, two systems is alive and well. China has not broken its promises to Hong Kong, as I said at the Foreign Correspondents' Club today, and let the facts speak for themselves.
Right, yes. Thank you, Regina, for sharing your insights into the political reform in Hong Kong. As you have said, if Hong Kong people can unite together and take advantage of all the new opportunities, Hong Kong will be reset on its way to prosperity and stability. And thank you for watching, and have a good week and good night.